The 1080 Ti, the flagship card of the 10 series from Nvidia. And in my personal opinion, it is the best graphics card of modern times. And I want to make today's video to talk about why that is, why the 1080 Ti was such a groundbreaking card, why it's still so valuable to everyone, and why it's a key important part of the history of graphics cards going forward. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the interesting things that make the 1080 Ti the best graphics card we've seen a good bit of time. So the first thing we have to do when we're looking at the 1080 Ti is examine the architecture. The architecture was based around Nvidia's Pascal design, which was just, in the long scheme of things, another design that was put into the cards. But where it really comes down, where it really matters, is the fact that the 1080 Ti was released after the 1080, 1070, and I believe the 1060. And so this was released almost a year afterwards, the initial release of the 1080. So the 1080 Ti had the advantages of being a card that already had a similar design. The drivers were kind of similar, so it got right out of the box, right out of the initial release. It had the driver support, it had all the stuff that supported it, and so we ended up getting a card that was at its fullest potential almost right out of the box, which is kind of unseen with especially these new cards that are coming out. I think Navi or some of that stuff are still going to face these problems, where the 1080 Ti did not. So right out of the box it had a great performance start, just because of the driver optimization. The next thing is Pascal lasted almost 3 years. And for the 1080 Ti, it was almost a year and a half before the 2080 Ti came out after it. Meaning that people that bought the 1080 Ti, like example me, bought the 1080 Ti, they had a good year and a half of being the top dog on the market. They had the highest end card out there. And that was a cool feeling, especially for me having someone that video is solely based a lot on the facts and my personal experience with this card. And so this is why I think the 1080 Ti is at least one of the reasons why I think it was such a great top-end flagship card. The next up is the fact that the value of the 1080 Ti really hasn't lost its value yet. And this video is recorded in June 2nd of 2019. And currently the 1080 Ti is still sitting at its MSRP almost 2 years later after its initial release, thanks to Nvidia's extremely aggressive and, my personal opinion, stupid pricing scheme for their latest 20 series cards. The 10 series cards really haven't lost any of their value. They are still just as prized. A 1080 Ti is still just as prized as a 2080, and it's really kind of stupid the way that Nvidia did this. Unlike past generations where the card, the top flagship card replaces the previous flagship's card in MSRP, Nvidia thought it would be a wonderful idea to jack up the price and stop producing the 1080 Ti's. Whereas now the 1080 Ti's are almost, I don't know, not that common commodity. So people are really interested in getting their hands on one. So the next thing is the ability and performance that we got out of these cards. For example, 1080 Ti was able to drive most games at high to medium settings at 4K 60 FPS, and there were multiple games that it went way past, and there were a couple games that it had problems with, but still, it was really a powerful card. And unlike the 1080 or the 1070, it was designed for 4K, and it was supposed to be one of the first 4K cards of our time that could do 4K 60. Even the 2080 Ti cannot do 4K 120 FPS on most games. So you're looking at something that really, the 1080 Ti was its first 4K card that was designed specifically for 4K to have playable FPS. Now also, the big thing to keep in mind is another reason why I like the 1080 Ti so much, and in particular the 10 series, but the 1080 Ti is what this video is about. So the 1080 Ti has a blower style card, and we gotta admit that the Founders Edition blower style card on the 10 series is not best for throttling and temps and things like that. We know that. It's a common, what's the right word? I guess it's very common knowledge. Now, if you look at it though, the looks on it, I gotta say, is by far one of the most snazzy, beautiful looking blower style cards I think ever that I've ever seen. It's definitely a very good looking blower style card, temps aside. Now obviously the Founders Edition for the 20 series In my personal opinion, I don't think it looks as good as the 10 series, but that's my personal opinion. Plus, I believe the temps on the 20 series are better than what you had on the 10 series. So that's really a draw there. But in my personal opinion, I think it's a good showpiece. It sits in the case, and it looks pretty cool. Temps aside, though, it looks pretty cool. And the other thing is, the 10 series cards, in particular the 1080 Ti, since it was the top of the block, had an extremely rare occurrence happen. So during the height of 2017, beginning of 2018, we had one of the most craziest periods of computer hardware inflation in history. We've had something where a 1080 Ti literally went from being $700 to almost $1,500. I believe at my time, or when I looked online, the card that I have back here used was over $1,500. So how often can you say that your top-end flagship card has been an investment and has not depreciated, but rather appreciated? That's really something that has never happened in the history of graphics cards and in components. Which I won't necessarily say that that's a direct result from the card itself. I would say that because there was such a demand for high power and high compute graphics cards out there, I would say that, whatever the top card would have been, same from AMD or Nvidia, I think it would have been in short supply and the same thing would have happened. But the 1080 Ti was the card at the time in the right place. So really it comes down to is the 1080 Ti was a good investment just because of where it was and when it was released. So finally, I guess the other thing I'd like to point out is the fact that you're watching this video. You were still interested in the 1080 Ti almost 2 years after its release. You're watching this video and you're interested to see why in the world do I personally think that this card is the best, and here's my proof. You're watching this video. It's definitely quite unheard of that people are still taking interest in a card 2 years after it's released with 2-year-old technology, and in the case of Pascal, almost 3.5 years. So really, it shows that the card not only has left a lasting impact, but is still relevant today. But thank you all very, very much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And if you're interested, check out the channel for other cool tech-related news, reviews, builds, unboxings, things of that nature. And if I never see you again, well, have a wonderful life, and thank you guys very much for watching. Goodbye.